Hi there, everybody. It's Tom again. I hope everyone got at least a little something of what they wanted under the Christmas tree. I know I did. Ron and I are on our well-earned holiday break, so until we get back, we thought we'd put together another fun look back at our last year of our podcast, the Best of 2017 Part 2. These are some pieces of some of our favorite episodes. Later on in the episode, we're going to be talking to our good friend David Duley, an amazing real estate investor, giving us some of his well-earned wisdom. He's got a lot of incredible insight and stories about what's going on in the market today, and giving us a little peek behind the curtain to see, if he's buying or selling or neither. After that, we got a really interesting segment with Eric Petz, a teammate of mine who specializes in short sales and distressed property. He tells us what's really going down with foreclosures and the pitfalls of those who go into that area unprepared. And our last segment will be with my lovely wife, Julie. Julie is an attorney who specializes in setting up wills and trusts. She's going to tell us today about how important these tools are to your financial health, and to make sure your home and any other real estate you own avoids the expensive process of probate and goes to the right person should something untimely happen to you. But right at the top here, we're going to start off with an episode I did where I tell the story of how negotiating was introduced to me by my wife, who I just mentioned, when we went to purchase my wedding band when we got married. I talk a little about what I've learned about the art of negotiation during my time as a real estate agent, and how I learn more every day. I hope you enjoy all of these as much as we did when we made them. So, well, enough yakking. Cue the drums.
You're going nowhere. Don't blame me for what you've done, because I know that you are having fun.
Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast, exposing the real estate secrets your agent doesn't want you to know. Here's your host, Tom Clary.
Don't you just walk away. When I'll say,
I want to start out by telling you a little story about how I was introduced into the whole world of negotiation by my wife, Julie. It was a little late in life, but luckily, thankfully, before I started my occupation as a real estate agent, we had just got engaged, and we were on our way to the Los Angeles jewelry district to buy my wedding band. Now, let me tell you about my wife. Not only is she an attorney, so definitely not a stranger to high-powered negotiations herself, but she's also, let's say, she's Chinese. So her mom and dad came from China and were no strangers to the world of, haggling and negotiating for goods and services. Over the years, they had instilled in my now wife the skill and fortitude to bargain with strangers, shop owners, and the like. I mean, me, on the other hand, I was horrified by this. I come from a very shy, very waspy, very Northern European background where, to challenge or haggle what someone has claimed as the value of their goods and services is tantamount to insulting them to their face, right? We're all about smoothing things over, not creating more conflict. And because of this, I'd completely deluded myself into thinking that, not only was it some sort of slight to the other person, but just absolutely useless as well, right? Like, I thought, that's great, honey, but this is America. Things don't work that way here. I just completely dismissed whole cloth. Like it was just absolutely futile and insulting to the other person to boot. And while we were dating, she'd be like, "You're crazy, idiot. You can actually get better deals if you just ask for them." And I was like, no way. If you ever do that in front of me, I'm just going to say that I don't know you and completely walk away from you. No, scratch that. I'm going to run away from you. And that was because my family never did it. I would imagine falsely how the other person felt. But this time, she was just not having it. We were on our way out to the car, and she says, listen to me, you big dope. I am haggling for this. These guys in the jewelry district expect it. You are not going to run away. You are not going to sabotage me. Do you understand? We're going to get a better deal for this band. And I started bitching, and she's like, you just need to shut the hell up. So I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to show you once and for all that this is absolutely useless. And when I show you this doesn't work, I don't want to hear about haggling ever again. All right? Deal? Do we have an agreement? And because my wife is an incredibly intelligent woman, she did. She agreed. So I said, okay, big shot, what do you want me to do? So she told me some signals that we were going to give each other about how much or how little I wanted something. I wanted something like, I really like that ring. And if they played ball and I really wanted the ring, I would say something that was somewhat derogatory yet encouraging about it. She'd get the message and start the negotiation. She would offer less for it and work her way up to what she felt was a reasonable price. Her last offer would be framed with something like, would you take X for it if I paid cash? If they said no, then it meant that they weren't playing ball with us and we had to walk away. No matter what, we had to turn around and walk out of the store. Now, this will be an important part of the strategy that I'll bring up later, but I said fine and agreed I would abide by her rules. So we go down to the LA jewelry district and my heart is just sick. I know that I'm going to be completely embarrassed by this situation. But by God, like any boneheaded husband who thinks they know better, I'm going to prove my point to her. This isn't some third world bazaar we're talking about. This is the gosh darn United States of America, where you walk into a Walmart or a Target, see a price tag on something you want, take it up to the front counter and pay that exact same amount. My wife just smiled the entire way there because she knew what was going to happen. So we get there and we go through a bunch of shops. And I can't even concentrate on the rings. I'm so wound up by the scene that I know she's going to make. I'm just like, yeah, that's nice. Or sure, that one's not bad. And she's like cool as a cucumber. So we go into this one shop and there's this really big guy behind the counter. Really tough looking guy. And I'm like, oh no, seriously? And we start looking at the rings and then I see it. It's the perfect ring. And I'm like, crap. I so don't want to do this. I'm totally dreading what's coming next. So Julie looks at me and she sees I'm making a connection with this ring. So she asks me, do you like it? And I go reluctantly into the secret words. It's okay. That meant I really, really wanted it. We couldn't let this guy behind the counter know this, so I'm only saying, it's okay. I mean, I'm not going to say, that's the only ring for me, because then he'll have us over a barrel, right? No leverage. So I just say, it's okay. And she starts to go into the haggle. And I look at her, and and man, I'm sure I was imagining this, but her eyes roll back into her head, like a shark when it's about to feed. And I'll just make up the numbers here because it's been a long time over the last 10 years, but I'll just say that the ring was about $1,000 or on the price tag. And I was prepared to pay that. I would have paid double not to be standing there right then. So Julie winds up and makes her first pitch. It's a nice ring. $1,000 was more than we wanted to spend. Would you take $650 for it? And I'm like, oh God, no, go to my happy place. I can't be here. Oh, this is bad. She offered $350 less than what it said on the price tag. This is crazy. And I'm watching the guy, and he shakes his head. No, absolutely not. And I'm just feeling, oh, see? This is a total disaster, a total and absolute disaster. Of course he's saying no. Of course. But then he scratches his head, thinks about it for a second or so longer, and says, I think I could do $850. And then the world froze. I was like, come again? Whoa, what was that? I couldn't believe what I just heard. I was like Alice falling through the looking glass. Things sort of turned all weird and warpy. It felt like that, that whole bullet time slowdown in the Matrix, like reality was folding in on itself. Did this guy just tell us he would take less for the ring than he was selling it for? I was stunned. I mean, silent. If this was true, that you could actually deal and negotiate for things, just think of all the opportunities you could have to save money. Think of all the opportunities I'd already wasted. And then I got so excited, I just couldn't stop. I was like, out of nowhere, I completely blurred out to the guy, would you take $750 for it if I paid you cash? The cat was out of the bag. It was supposed to be the coup de grace, and I completely jumped the gun. Julie looked at me like I'd totally blown it. She still had some haggling to do, and I'd completely stolen her thunder. The guy looks at me. He says, $750? Good. Okay. Yeah, it's a deal. And I'm like, what? And we throw down the cash, and I'm like skipping out of the place all jazzed. I'm like, the sun is shining. There's rainbows and unicorns running around. I'm tap dancing down the street. And I turned to Julie, and I'm all proud. And I'm like, can you believe it? I got him to come down to $750. That was awesome. And she just looks at me all cross, and she says, you freaking idiot. He would have gone for $700. Oh, well. She didn't think it was as successful as I did, but that didn't matter. A whole new world had opened up to me. It was a world of negotiation. Now, I really don't think that I'm alone when I say that a lot of people either don't realize that you can negotiate and make deals, or are just too embarrassed to think that they can't. When it comes down to it, I think we've been conditioned to not create conflict. And by wheeling and dealing, we risk angering the other party or hurting feelings. But negotiation can be a useful tool when needed. And sometimes, as I learned with my dealings in the jewelry district, often expected. The sooner you can get over your fear of conflict, the better. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily have to be a dirty word, conflict. By conflict, I just mean two opposing sides with two different needs. So there's a book that I highly recommend, and I'll be quoting it a bit in this episode. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris was the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. He now teaches his techniques around the world. This book is literally the best book I've ever read about negotiation. Seriously, you should go to Amazon right now, put this on pause, go and buy it, and then come back, of course. And by the way, we'll get into the title a little bit too. Not splitting the difference will be a big part of what you should do when it comes time to negotiate all or part of your real estate transaction. But like I said, I'll get into that later. But in his book, he talks about this fear of negotiation. He says, and this is a quote, "The first step to achieving a mastery of daily negotiation is to get over your aversion to negotiating. You don't need to like it. You just need to understand that's how the world works. Negotiating does not mean browbeating or grinding someone down. It simply means playing the emotional game that human society is set up for. In this world, you get what you ask for. You just have to ask correctly. So claim your prerogative to ask for what you think is right." But there's and this is end quote. But there's an interesting additional level of complication when it comes to negotiation for a real estate transaction. Whether you are the buyer or the seller, it's very rare that you're doing the actual negotiation. It's usually an intermediary, someone else that's doing it. It's your real estate agent. So I think the best place to start discussing negotiations as they pertain to real estate really starts with choosing a competent real estate agent in the first place. You want to make sure that they will be able to not only be persuasive when it comes to presenting their arguments, but also that they will not just fold at the slightest bit of pressure. You want them to be able to face the other side boldly, but not just, as Voss says, browbeat or grind. Anybody can do that. There will be times that you might need some goodwill, and if your agent has been a total jerk to them, they'll take you. They'll tell you to go take a hike. So for a protector agent, it's not just about making sure your best interests are taken care of. That's a given, but it's also composure and charisma that plays a big part here. So how do you know if your agent is someone that can negotiate with the best of them? Well, here's what I suggest, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack from other agents here, but if they really can negotiate, this shouldn't be an issue for them. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to ask them for money. For the seller's agent, you're going to ask them to reduce their commission. And for the buyer's agent, you're going to ask them to give you, back a rebate on their commission. Now, don't get all excited here. Like, cool, free money. No, this is a negotiation you want to lose. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's going to go one of three ways. The first way is the one who is desperate, a WA, a weak agent, that just wants to get any commission. Their form of negotiation is not to negotiate at all. What do you think is going to happen when the other side makes any, limp fish offer or counter? They're going to fold like a quesadilla. As you would probably expect, I encourage you to run. Don't walk away from them. Do not engage them. Do not hire them. The money, any money you would save, would go right into the other side's pocket. Trust me. The second way is that they will reject you outright. These are usually the SAs, the salesperson agents. They only see you as a dollar sign, and if you won't give them what they want right away, they have no time for you. And they will usually make you feel like you were scum for even asking. You have now labeled yourself as a difficult client, and they don't care if you go away because they don't have time to waste. They just want to get you into escrow and on to the next deal. So take it or leave it. But if you do decide to go with them, well, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to use this same strong-arm tactic when something needs to be negotiated, and that is not the attitude you want. You could very well find yourself losing a deal or making a bad situation even worse because they hurt the other side's feelings. As I said, there could be times when goodwill can be incredibly useful later on in a deal. And the third way you'll see is that of the protector agent. They will listen to what you say very carefully and then ask you very specific questions about why you want the reduction or rebate. They will then give you definitive facts about why they can't or won't give it to you. I'd love to give you a reduction on my commission, but I provide a lot more value than other agents. I make sure your home is professionally photographed. That costs money. I do a video of your property. That costs money. I pay for a free staging consult of your property. That costs money. And on top of it, if you look at my sales versus others in your area, you'll see that on average, my clients net about 20% more than list price whenever they sell. Value, value, value. Facts, facts, facts. And all the while, they don't belittle you and your request. They are persuasive without being salesy and honest without being arrogant. They just want you to understand that their side is completely valid. Give them a little pressure and see if they crack. If they don't, then trust me, you want to lose that negotiation. You do not want to win. Not this time. You want to do everything you can to keep them at whatever cost they're asking for. Because this is how they're going to handle the negotiations when you aren't there. That's right. Most of the time, you won't even be in the room when most of the negotiations take place. So when they are on the phone with the agent from the other side, standing up for you strongly with facts, you want to know that they are going to be the best representation for you, and they aren't going to settle until there is a deal everyone can be happy with. Next up is a portion of our interview with David Duley. David is a serial entrepreneur and real estate investor who had a whole bunch of great advice about how he's been able to amass a portfolio of rental homes in the Atlanta area. One of my favorite bits of advice he gave us was that if you hear your Uber driver talking about making a killing in real estate or any other investment, it's probably too late to jump on board. All in all, a really great talk. I hope you enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, David Duley. So while we're kind of here, what do you kind of put your Nostradamus hat on, and what do you think in terms of where we're going to go, and what do you think investment? Let's kind of let's talk in general about the real estate market, but let's also I want to kind of lean towards what would you be thinking investment wise, like
for real estate?
Yeah.
Whew.
Big long sigh.
I think we're near the top. I think we're going to get close to a correction in the next 18, 24 months. I think people are going to inevitably freak out because most of the only currency, if you think about it in America, is confidence.
Yeah.
That's really the only, it drives consumer behavior. We're a consumeristic economy. It produces 85%, I think, of our GDP, consumer-based behavior. And so people are going to be like, holy shit, it's happening again. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with that thinking is the fundamentals and the stability of the financial markets might not be in such disarray. But if enough people believe it's in disarray,
right,
it becomes in disarray. And so that's my concern. My concern is that we'll have a normal correction. Part of the philosophy, we live in fake news land, so who knows what will be talked about and what's really going on and what people will believe, because clearly there's no one knows what's going on. I mean, we can all admit that. I mean, I don't know. I have a political / podcast, and I can't tell you what's going on.
Right.
And so I think there's going to be a lot of deep concern. I think if unemployment rates go up, prices of homes will go down. I know that, often follows interest rates, but I think confidence, if you watch consumer confidence level, if that starts shaking and dropping, that's when things are going to get scary. And so for someone like me, I want to live way below my means, always. Right. And so I want to squirrel away money. Like, I have friends that are exceptionally smart, and they're in the finance world or whatever, and they come to me about real estate investing and have like, should I buy this? And I'm like, so let me see if I understand this correctly. You're in a bidding war for a house for $800,000 in Atlanta. That's a big.
That's a mansion.
That's a good house.
That's a really nice home.
But you wouldn't touch this house for $400,000 4 years ago.
Right.
And so tell me, you're buying at the height of the market.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, and I've always done this with my life, and it's served me well. You want to be counter to popular culture. So if everyone's in the stock market, you're going to have to be like, should I be getting out of the stock market? If everyone's in real estate, you need to think, why is everyone in real estate?
Yeah.
If everyone wants to be, if your Uber driver is giving you advice on real estate investing, you might want to think about, maybe it's time to get out of real estate investing. But real estate investing is not just buying, it's also selling. All investing is buying and selling, and knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. And so if you're willing to play the game and understand the cycles, in my opinion, the cycle now is to sell, is to squirrel away dry powder, is to start lining up capital sources of wealthy individuals that won't have places to put their money when there's another downturn. The banks are going to be reluctant to loan to investors, even as they kind of are now, ironically, because they brought that cap in that you can only have 10 mortgages or something like that, Ron?
Right.
I think, for investments, and it used to be 20 or 30, and that's what got people overextended.
Yeah.
But make money on the downturn on the buying side,
right?
And then have that buying side, that asset that you buy at a low price, have it pay for your primary residence.
Right.
Right? And then maybe try to buy that on the low side too. I used to be a huge proponent of owning your own home, right?
Right.
And if you look at all the data charts, owning your own home is one of the greatest things you can do to build wealth.
Right.
And that is true, right? But it depends on when you buy that home.
Sure.
And so, in what your terms are when you buy
is
that
it
home.
necessarily when you buy it, but how long you're going to hold it for?
Yes, even more,
Yeah.
without questions.
Yeah.
So if you buy something and this is going to be your forever home, it almost doesn't really even matter what you pay.
Right.
But if you think you're going to be out of it in 5 years, you really need to think about when you figure in agent commissions, what a downturn in the market could do to your equity, if it makes sense. And so my first job was like in the investment world, and I ran into the guy that hired me, and he read about me in the newspaper because I won this silly award in Atlanta, and he reached out to me. He's like, let's grab lunch. And we got lunch and we were talking about homes. He lives in this ridiculous mansion in Atlanta. And he's like, you know what? I never thought I'd say this, but I don't think I want to own a primary house. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, it just takes money away from me. I pay for it. He goes, I just want to own things that make money and let that pay rent wherever I am. So it's interesting, as a country, we're seeing this massive inflow of rental property.
Right.
But we're seeing this huge spike in rental price increases. And so is that philosophy taking hold as well? So it's an interesting theory.
And let me just kind of throw my kind of ideas about this in. And just in terms of what I'm kind of seeing out there, I think that, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, and that you have kind of the millennial generation, right? And what they went through when, the crash happened, 2008, 2009, they saw their families.
They went through prom.
They went to prom, right? No, but definitely, right? Because it was right that perfect age.
Yeah.
But it was also this kind of formative time for them.
Totally.
And they saw their families or their friends' families marched out of their homes with boxes.
Yep.
And so there's this real emotional fear that they live in when they think about owning a home.
Totally.
And I think that might also be what could possibly be. I don't even think it's possibly. I think it has a lot to do with why we're seeing such an increase in rental rates, because nobody wants. There's too many renters out there. I mean, that's the supply and demand thing.
Yeah, totally.
It's there. Nobody wants to think about buying now. It's even though, think about it. Right now we've got interest rates, even though they're starting to crawl. Well, they went down. Right? I mean, last week.
Yeah, they did, and they've actually been down all week. I mean, we've now touched 230, so it was 239 on the 10-year,
but still historically,
a couple weeks ago it was up to 260.
Historically low, and for the time being, things are still inventory is so low because people are. They're like looking at it and going, oh, I don't want to sell because where am I going to go, basically.
That's my position.
And so what you have is this kind of stalemate happening.
Right.
And so, but if you really looked at it though, in terms of buying things like a forever home or buying like some sort of long-term residence, I think now would be a good time to buy if you can find it, because your cost of money is still incredibly low. And for the time being, things are going to keep climbing. There is that stalemate.
Totally. And so this, and I also think it's who you are as a person and what your career paths. So if you're an attorney and you're going to stay at the law firm, or you're going to stay in the general area and you're going to go through the associate and vice associate, whatever, and to eventually partner, and you know that that's the process in life that you're choosing to live, that's one thing. If you're an entrepreneur like me and you come up with crazy ideas every other day, you want to be a little bit more flexible in what that means from your financial situation. And so I just think and what we've seen in this quote unquote sharing economy is that people, look where we are right now.
Yeah.
Right? This is a great example of not wanting to own something. It's wanting to rent space that it would take 10 years ago, you'd have to build $1 billion company to have an office like this.
But just a philosophical thing, and I kind of knowing something about your leanings, this is going to be incredibly an interesting for me here, but
Give in, Tom. Give in.
I know, I'm going to the dark side.
Let's do it.
But don't you feel that there's going to be a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots? Because there WeWorks does have owners. There are people who owning those apartment buildings. There are people who are owning those homes that people are renting from. So somebody's taking advantage.
Totally.
So, I mean, why wouldn't you jump into that if you want? Isn't there?
Sure.
I mean, land is scarce.
So here's my very big philosophical answer to that.
Love it.
I can live off of 1% of $1 billion. I can't live off of 1% of $10,000. So you have these massive corporations that are able to go in and buy at the scale to yield the type of cash flow that can create and sustain a business where the average person cannot.
Right.
It's really
at least in this economic atmosphere.
In this economic atmosphere.
Well, in real estate, what do you have? Like the Blackstones, right?
Right.
So now they bought when you bought.
It's all volume.
Right, 2010, and now they're actually creating the new rentals, right? So
Totally.
And now they're
own
all
like
landlords.
100,000 homes or 200,000 homes they own or something stupid like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But you bet they're going to be selling it too. And then moving on to the next opportunity.
Exactly. And so, of course, there's always people making money, and it's the laws of large numbers. And so it just to your point, it creates a greater separation between those that have and those that don't. Because if I had $1 billion of cash that I wanted to put to work in a stable investment, I might buy real estate because I would want to generate yield off that.
Right.
But and a lot of these guys don't subject themselves to interest rate risk, or they hedge it. They have some internal hedge because they're buying someplace else overseas with different correlations to the dollar. I mean, it becomes ridiculously complicated, where the average investor just doesn't want to
that hassle.
Deal with that or even understand it.
Right.
And so I agree.
But okay, so then
there's a house for sale in the Highlands that's the guy put $34 million into it and it's for sale for $16 million. I got an update on it. That's literally a fortified bunker, so we can all buy that. So when it all
nice.
When the zombie apocalypse comes.
So if I may, because I'm the eternal optimist. So I mean, we have Trump, right? So he's like a real estate and finance guy. He's going to save us all. Right?
All right, Ron. Ease down, buddy.
My philosophy is the greatest freedom in life is when you don't have to rely on anyone but yourself.
Of course.
And so anyone that looks to the government for answers, I always say if people are out there worried about what the government is doing in their healthcare, maybe they need to ask the question, why is government in healthcare? Or who they can marry. You have to ask, why is the government in the marriage business? Or what I can put on my own property. What is government? Or we'll even go here because we're in California, a legally, naturally growing plant. Why is that not allowed on my property? And so you kind of have to look at these things and say, who are the interested parties and what are the economic benefits of creating this regression or repression of certain ideas, or to your point, making an environment that's difficult for the common, hard, blue-collar worker that built this country, the middle class. Why aren't they getting ahead? Because wages are stagnant, cost of everything is increased, and we live in, unfortunately, a consumeristic economy where people are bombarded every day to buy this freaking phone I have, or these ridiculous glasses, or whatever it is that costs more money than I should be spending on those things.
So as a real estate agent, one of the most asked questions I get is, how can I buy a foreclosure? And it's sort of a frustrating question because they've probably seen the whole idea of buying a house like this glamorized on HGTV or some other place with flip or rehab in the title. The process is much more complex than this, and at its heart are people who probably don't want to sell their home in the first place. We had Eric Petz on the program, and he's an expert on distressed properties and short sales. He's actually a short sale negotiator, meaning he works with banks to help folks get out of homes that are underwater on and having trouble making the mortgage. He takes us step by step through the foreclosure process, and even tells us about how some very shady characters take advantage of people on the courthouse steps when they're bidding for one. So, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Petz. What was interesting was during the whole crash, when that happened, and I was out there, I was actually looking for my house during that time. And I was going out there and finding, there was strangely, not a lot of houses, which I thought was really weird. You'd walk into 9 out of 10 houses and they would have paint on, people took spray paint to the walls, or they, did some sort of horrible thing to it or whatever. But then I started doing more research, and this was before I really kind of went into real estate. And what was interesting was that I found out this term called shadow inventory. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Where basically the banks had all these houses, right, but weren't letting them out onto them. And I knew that, I was going down the road and I was seeing a lot of houses with tall grass. Yeah. And I would know, like, wait a minute, there's a lot more out there than what is on the market. And that took time because they wanted to kind of do their own quantitative easing, in terms of bringing them back on the market, because then it would have even gone even further.
Well, and not only that, what they were actually doing was what a lot of different investors have done, which was, you referenced the investor that you talked about, this guy who bought all these properties. I knew a lot of different investors who were acquiring properties. They were turning them into rentals. They were buying them as short sales, so they're getting a deep discount on the property. Already, yeah. They were doing basic upgrades to it so that it was basically habitable. Right. With the intention of sitting on it while the renter, was paying the mortgage. Right. So banks were doing the same thing. Yeah, right. So they had all these property management companies that were managing these properties. Even if you saw this property with the tall grass, there could be the next 5 properties on that street were all owned by the bank, and they were all converted into rentals already. The entire idea was let's wait until this market picks back up again, which ultimately it did. I mean, in 2013, it was unbelievable. The market all of a sudden overnight just started booming. We went from, it was literally within a couple week time frame. I was having conversations with people about, it's got to do the short sale. I don't know. My property values are never going to come back, to the following month being like, oh my God, my property went up by 10%. So that stuff was happening. So the banks knew that was going to happen. So they transitioned to all this stuff, waiting for that,
waiting for it to come back out.
And it did.
Yeah. So then what were you seeing that made you say, well, no, I'm sticking here? Like, what was it? There was still enough there that and I guess because when you're the only game in town, right, or you're the only person who's really kind of, when everybody else has turned their backs on it, what made you kind of go, no, I'm still seeing something here?
I think it was because I had cast such a wide net. Yeah. And I had met so many real estate professionals who knew my background and understood how competent I was, that I was getting calls on a regular basis. So even when I was because I was still doing I started doing traditional real estate at that time. Like, I was doing a couple transactions here and there. Right. But I was never really got that side of my business off the ground, because I was getting calls, a couple calls every month, from real estate agents who said, I got this short sale deal, and here's the scenario. It's really weird. I got 5 liens, and it's it's convoluted. I got my, the guy's mother-in-law has a lien, and she's doing this. And
and by the way, we're going to get, I have every intention to get back into explaining what that means. And that's when you're going out there and you want to buy a short sale, these are things you're going to have to overcome. And
absolutely.
And it's funny you say that, because if it was easy, they would just put it on the market and we're done. right? They wouldn't be doing a short sale.
Well, and even if, ultimately, I mean, a short sale is just to define it simply.
Well, and by the way, let's stop everything here right now, and let's just talk basic terminology. So everybody
that's important.
So everybody can get, because I'm always surprised, like when I would think after the big crash and everybody was inundated by all the bad news and foreclosures and all that. To this day, when I mention short sales, a lot of people don't even really know what that means.
Right. They have a lot of. They have a big misunderstanding about what it is or how it works.
Exactly. So let's take it all the way back to the NOD.
Great.
So let's start with the NOD.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So a NOD is notice of default, right? That's the official filing that says the lender is going to start the foreclosure process. Now, here's a misnomer. A notice of default does not have to be involved in a short sale. A short sale is simply where someone owes more on their property than it's worth. You could have a break even at the mortgage, but then you have a credit card lien that you have to facilitate. That's now a short sale.
Got it.
A short sale is simply where you're upside down, right? You owe more than it's worth. That's all it is. Now, when the foreclosure most of these properties are typically in foreclosure, right? Because when you get upside down, you don't know what to do. You have to dump your property. Right. So it turns into a short sale.
So we have the NOD where basically you haven't paid your. So let's take. So that's the one thing. The one is where you're just upside down, where you owe more than the house is worth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's That's basically a short sale, but you can get there from different avenues.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter which avenue you get there. There's only one definition.
Right. No.
Right.
Yes. Right.
But now the notice of default or the foreclosure activity that happens.
That's
it's synonymous.
That's exactly right.
It's synonymous with it, but there isn't really a correlation.
Right. Exactly.
That's the reality. There's not really a correlation. It just so happens that most of the properties we've created that connection because most of the people
who are going through it did that. Exactly.
Are in default. Correct. Now, to get back to the default and how it works.
Right. Yes.
So initially, actually before the notice of default, there is a process.
Yeah.
So when you go behind in your payments, you're going to get a notice after 30 days that says you haven't paid for 30 days and you have 30 days to get current. If you do not, we will file the foreclosure. So that in California, that's a requirement that they have to send that. So the attorneys send that out. Then the foreclosure notice happens. That's the notice of default, which you referenced. You have a 90-day window to get current.
Right.
If you do not get current at the 90-day mark, they can file a notice of trustee sale, an NOTS.
Right.
At that point, it's 20 days. They can initiate the actual foreclosure and take the house back at the auction steps, basically.
Now, and what's interesting about, and just so people understand the concept of a trustee, so basically, when you get your house, you're handing off until you're done paying your mortgage, you're handing off your deed to the trustee, basically, who acts as a middleman between you, the client, the buyer of the house, and your bank, basically. Yep. And the bank tells the trustee, okay, these guys are not paying their bills, so you guys get started with the trustee sale. So basically, the bank isn't technically doing the sale; it's actually the trustee. That's why it's a trustee sale. At least that's how we do it here in California.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a law firm that's been hired by the bank, and and most banks don't actually even own the loan.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing a lot of short sales, it's something that you're constantly finding. Most banks don't own the loan that they're actually servicing. They're just simply a servicing entity. So there's multi-layers to the actual short sale process because you have all these various parties, and we can get into that later. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of minutia involved in a transaction like this.
Absolutely. And okay, so then we talked about the notice of trustee sale.
Yeah.
Then you're standing on the courthouse steps.
Right.
And
I owned a company that did this.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, it's called Albie & Phillips Auction Services. We bought properties at foreclosure auction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I back when I was a teenager and literally or college, I was like, I want to do this. Like I had heard about, foreclosures and all, and this was before the crash, like way before the crash.
Right.
Because I'm old. I'm an old guy. And, but I said, I got to check out what one of these sales looks like. So I went down to Norwalk and it was one of the most interesting things I'd ever seen. Well, first off, back then, the guy read the list. The guy comes out on the courthouse steps and reads off what's for sale. And what I think it was 100% that day were all bankruptcies that basically they declared bankruptcy and it got pushed.
Constantly happening.
Right. So, even when something is going through the foreclosure process, they can actually hold it by declaring bankruptcy.
There's a lot of ways to do it. Bankruptcy works if someone files a loan modification within 3 weeks of the actual sale date. There's a homeowner bill of rights, which requires the bank to at least review it. So there are a lot of different ways, legal ways, that you can postpone a sale date at the 11th hour. And I've done all of these in the middle of short sales. I've had clients file bankruptcy. We've filed loan modification paperwork. Nope, we're canceling the short sale because the bank wasn't willing to move forward on it. They said, you don't have enough time to submit your short sale, so we're not going to do it. We're going to foreclosure. Okay, great. Well, guess what? I'm going to pull this trump card out here, and we're going to file a loan modification, and now the bank is forced by law to wait. So then we wait, and then as soon as that's cleared up, the sale date passes. Oh, guess what? We're doing a short sale. Hey, big surprise.
Right.
There's always a way to postpone.
Right. So what I also found really fascinating is I actually started talking to people who were doing that back then, and they told stories of these guys who are these, investors, developers, whoever goes there on that morning, right? Every single time that they're out there, and whenever they see a new face show up, because they want to keep them all to themselves.
Absolutely.
Basically. And what they'll do is they'll have, and tell me if this is true, because I'm only hearing this, anecdotally, is that they will bid up a house and let someone just completely, they know that person is going to win the auction, but lose their shirts.
There was a group
and never do it again.
Between Norwalk and there was another location which eludes me, and I don't know why. I feel like a moron for forgetting this, but Norwalk is where most of the properties are sold, and auction.com actually took that over, and I can talk to you about that later because the process looks different now.
I'd really love to hear it.
But there's a group called the 40 Thieves. This is not a joke.
I am loving this.
This is very real.
Okay.
And I don't know if they're still down there because I haven't been to the auctions in about a year. Wow. But there was a group, we called them the 40 Thieves. It was a group of a very loose conglomerate of individuals that all worked for different groups, but they worked together to prevent newbies from taking advantage of the foreclosure market. This is a real thing.
Wow.
So what they would do is, you described this perfectly. So what they'll do is, the auction will start. So someone will make a bid and they will bid above them, but just a teeny bit, and then allow them to come back over the top. They would also typically walk up to this person before the auction started and said, hey, it looks like you're new. You know what? Well, welcome. It's really nice to meet you. Are you bidding on anything today? Oh, I was bidding on this property. Oh, that's a good one. I hope you get it. That's so great. You know what? I think, I was looking at that because they know, by the way, they know exactly what they're going to bid on every property.
Well, of course.
They do all their research.
All the homework.
There's a lot of homework involved. They do all of it. So
they're not leaving it to chance.
No, they know exactly what their strike price is. So they'll talk to them about it and get them kind of buttered up, and they'll find out. The new person will be like, oh yeah, I'm going to bid this and I'm going to get it. And, oh, you know what? I wish you the best of luck and I hope you get it. And they will push them right up just a little bit above. A new person's going to get emotionally involved. They'd be like, oh, it's only 10 grand more, but that 10 grand is their profit margin.
That's the profit right there.
So they do this. They'll will try and convince someone to bid on a second.
Oh, interesting.
So, like, for instance, if you are buying a second at auction, which happens, right? The second lender's foreclosing. You just bought a second, but you are now liable for the entirety of the first. Oh my God! So it's not free and clear. So what they'll do is they'll talk to them about what a great opportunity that is, and look at this. And I've witnessed this personally many times. A new individual coming in thinking they just bought $1 million property for $100,000 without realizing that there's a $1.5 million first. So they basically what they did is they just threw away $100,000. It's gone.
Right.
You're never going to get it back. You do not own the property because you now are going to get foreclosed on by the first lender.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
True stories.
It's giving me flashbacks to the wise men in Training Day. Right? So, the cops who control everything.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where they were all sitting down and they're the ones that are pulling the strings.
I'm telling you, there's star chambers everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy
I told you all about
There's all these little things. I mean, I could go on. There's more stuff that happens. There's a mechanics liens that are going to be attached to the property, which follow the property for a year, even after foreclosure. So, you can see a property that's like processed, like it's in the process of construction, or there's major remodels, so they avoid bidding on that because they think, well, I could get a mechanics lien with that. The novice says, oh, you know what a great opportunity, and they forget about that piece, and then they buy it, and then they have $100,000 construction bill that they're forced to pay because it attaches to the property.
Wow.
They have a year to claim it, the builders. So I've seen that happen. There's a nuance.
Did you ever do it yourself? Did you ever go down?
For myself?
Yeah. Did you ever go down to the steps?
Yeah,
and do
absolutely.
it?
I've never purchased a property for myself.
Oh, but you just saw it.
But I bought a lot of properties for investors.
Oh, okay. So you did go through
Absolutely.
that process. So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
did you get through the 40 Thieves?
I became part of them.
Oh, really? So you just, what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you buy them coffee and
You
donuts?
became 41.
No, actually, how it worked is I hired a gentleman. His name was Chad. He had been doing it for a while. He knew all of them already. So I hired him to head up that department.
There
so
you go.
I brought someone in who already had the connection, and he also had some investment groups that he would work for. So I already had a large platform. I had a bunch of agents that we were working with. I had a handful of employees. So we gave him the support that he needed to be successful, and that's how I built that company. But I went with him countless times to understand the nuances of it and how it worked.
Listen, I got to take a moment and gripe here because because let me tell you something. I'm hearing this right now, and I think about all these goddamn people selling foreclosure. Like, you too can buy foreclosures. You can do these kind of things. Go to the courthouse. You have so much set up against you trying to do it this way. I'm not saying you can't. I mean, we're not saying it's impossible. But probably billions, at least millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of books, classes, that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's all a waste of money.
And you have you're up against a structure of people who have every interest in making sure that you not only not do it, but go away hurt.
But it's not just that they are there to prevent you from doing that. The other factors that prevent you from being successful is the fact that there are so many people who are trying to do the same thing you are, that everything below the $500,000 price point, which is probably where you're going to be when you first start, there are so many individuals in that price point that your margins are going to be slim, if not put you in the negative. It is so hard to acquire an asset in that price point because you have so much competition, let alone the fact that you now acquire a property, you're super happy about it, and maybe your margins are good when you first got it. But now you have to go through the eviction process. So you use hard money to buy the property. So now you have hard money holding costs for 6 months.
Describe hard money so
okay,
people
so
understand.
Hard money basically, and maybe you'd be better to describe this with the lending
sure.
background.
So really quick. So you have the traditional lending, right? So the Fannie, Freddie, that's where majority of loans are made in America, right? Then you have FHA, VA. So these are all different types of traditional loans. Then you have jumbo. Now, once you get outside of the traditional realm that fit within the conforming box, you now have other lenders, right? And these lenders have different appetites. So, we have brokers that will actually look at a client that may have a foreclosure in their history, right? And right now, Fannie and Freddie, it's 7 years. You have to wait 7 years for a foreclosure if you want a Fannie or Freddie loan, right? But there are lenders out there that will give you money one day out of foreclosure, right? And then there's that another bump where it's a little bit better rate if you have it 2 years outside of the foreclosure. And short sales is 4 years, right? So once you get outside of that realm, let's say you don't qualify for that broker's program, now you're talking about hard money, right? So hard money is a private investor, and typically you're looking at an investment property, right? You can't do hard money loans on residential, like owner occupied, because you have to prove the actual, your income, right? You have to somehow prove your income. But when it comes to investment properties, you're looking at hard money. And hard money, you're usually paying points, right? So you're paying 1% or 2% of the loan amount up front, and you're usually paying between 10, 12% overall in interest. And you have a set term, right? So sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it's a year, and it's you have to either refi, get out, sell it, or they're going to take it over, right? So bad stuff happens, right? So that's what hard money. So it's a private investor. And if you're an investor and you're thinking that you're going to get 45% on your return, or 400%, or whatever the number is, you'll take the 10%, right? Because you know that that's just a cost of doing business.
Right. It's just like, it's literally like when a store owner goes down and buys a certain, I have to spend $30 in order to make 50.
Yeah, and they talk about it on, flip or flop, right? They always talk about, we have another 10 days with this loan and it's costing us money, so we got to finish our flip and go on to the next one.
Anyway. Folks don't really want to talk about what happens after they die. They push it until it's really too late to do any good to help those who are left to clean up any mess after they're gone. This is really important when it comes to owning real estate. If you pass away without a will, or if the home isn't in some sort of a trust, you'll be subjecting your family to something called a probate, which can be a really frustrating and expensive process. In this section, my wife, Julie Clary, talks about how creating a trust for your home is at the center of a well-constructed estate plan, and how you can help those you love avoid a lot of headaches after you're no longer around. Here she is, Julie Clary.
I have always had experience in estate planning, but I made a conscious decision when I stepped out to open my own firm that I wanted to exclusively work in this particular area.
Right.
And knock on wood, it's been,
well, and it's also very
10 plus years.
You're and just from my, our years together, I know that you care so much about kind of helping folks out. I mean, it's when you talk about something as kind of, it can be a very morbid kind of subject. And talking about things where people are kind of in an area of their life where they might be scared, and you really care about helping them out.
Well, I think for me, the joy of what I do is being able to assist people, usually sometimes when they're in a hard time, when someone has passed, when there's something going on. But I also have a lot of joy in the planning part of it, because the planning part of it is like nothing's going on. They're just doing some planning.
Right? Yeah, well, you hope, right? They haven't reached that point where they got a bad diagnosis or something like that.
Right. And so that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's always, as with any you'll ask any lawyer, there's always when people start fighting, and that's when you go, okay, now we gotta try to break it all down and get everybody to stop the crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think that in order to let's start the conversation with, okay, I've just bought a house, and I think and we're going to kind of try to keep this as centered on real estate as we can. I've just bought a house. So why do I even want to put it in a trust or to, do that? Why do I even care?
Well, the hope is that in all likelihood, you have someone you care about that you want your things to go to.
Right.
The presumption is, perhaps your kids.
Right.
And if the way the law is structured in California is that if you if you only have a will, or you pass what we call intestate without any papers whatsoever, in order for those assets to transfer to your loved ones, they're gonna have to go through a probate.
So they would have to go to court. They would have to go and spend additional money.
It is probate is a court-monitored process by which the assets transfer to your beneficiaries or heirs if it's intestate, which is with no papers. It is unfortunately in California an expensive process. It's based on the fees are based on the size of your estate. So the bigger your estate, the bigger the fees.
Right.
The fees can be quite expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the reason why you'd want to do a document like a trust document is because it allows for the smooth transaction, the smooth giving of your assets to your beneficiaries without having to go through the expense and the time, because I'll tell you in LA County, you're not going to get a probate through in less than a year. Yeah. So, and there was a time when the courts were even more jammed, and it was much longer than that.
So it's a year that basically your family's going to have to deal with this pain in the butt, basically.
Correct. So for one of the things that I always think about when we talk about real estate is, okay, so someone has a house and they pass, it's in all likelihood they still have a mortgage on it.
Yeah,
Okay, so it doesn't mean that the mortgage holder isn't going to go, hey, you owe me money, and I know that the person's passed, but guess what? We're going to come take that property if you don't, give us our money.
So what happens in
on
those
a monthly
circumstances?
basis.
What usually happens?
I've done, if you open a probate in a timely manner, usually you can talk to the mortgage holder and say, hey, look, come on, this person has passed, and let's be reasonable here. And I've done that on a number of occasions. I've called, mortgage holders that are now in arrears of several months because the person has passed and said, come on, let's be reasonable here. But that doesn't mean that you don't incur fees. Even if they acquiesce and say, okay, you're 3 months behind, I get that the guy has passed, and I'll be happy to, we'll hold until you get your letters, which is that someone steps up and is administering the estate.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that all the penalties and fees that occurred for your failing to pay on time does not still continue. So
But that doesn't happen with a trust, though.
No. At the end of the day, when the estate is, ready to settle, you still got to go back and pay all those bills.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Right.
The analogy.
So if it's a husband and wife, and let's say the husband passes away and there's a mortgage on the property, then everything goes to the wife.
Depends on how title is held on the property, right?
Right.
So if the presumption is usually that a husband and wife will hold title to the property either as joint tenants with a right of survivorship, or which is very common, or nowadays as community property with the right of survivorship. Okay, so in those instances, yes, you have a surviving spouse who can now deal with the property. But again, heaven forbid something happens to a surviving spouse, because they're usually about the same age, give or take. Something happens to a surviving spouse, you're trying to look to avoid having this probate process hit them, why they want their house to go to their kid or their, whomever.
Right.
So that's kind of the, what we're really hoping to avoid by structuring estate planning. The analogy I like to use when setting up a trust is it's almost like setting up a corporation, in the sense that, you get to pick, you create the trust, i.e. the corporation, and then you get to pick who your successors are. So if heaven forbid something happens to you, your spouse can take over the stuff. Something happens to the two of you, perhaps you've designated your adult son or daughter to take over. And because you have this designation, you have someone who's going to step up and take care of all the business that happens when someone passes. The court says, okay, I'm not going to get involved in it, because you've created a legal instrument that's going to allow someone else to step up and take care of this business. And thereby, we're not going to get involved unless...
Why would we have to?
Right, unless someone starts fighting.
Right.
Right.
So in that event, you're back in court.
Right.
But for the most part, when someone has set forth their desires in a straightforward manner, the hope is that doesn't happen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I actually had a case where it was pretty interesting. It was husband and wife, and they both were going to go on title together, but they insisted, even though the wife had a lower credit score, they insisted that she was also on the loan, because if anything were to happen to the husband, that she couldn't qualify on her own. So, what would have to happen is obviously that mortgage holder would have to, they would have to know that the person has passed. And the only way they were to know is if they stopped making payments.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So, but I thought that was really interesting from that perspective, because they both were on title together, but they were adamant about it. And they actually had a lower rate as a result of it, but that's their comfort, right? So you do what the client asks you to do. But from your perspective, have you ever seen that happen where you have, one spouse that is on the loan solely, and then all of a sudden they pass away, and then now you have the person who, yes, they have the property, but then they either have to, refi on their own, or something even worse happens?
Well, I think it kind of depends again on how title is created at the time that the loan has occurred. I've had it happen where one spouse qualifies for the loan, obviously because they have better credit or whatever,
right.
And so the loan is taken out in one spouse's name, and then what we can do is we can do a trust for the two of them, because it's still going back to the two of them.
Right.
Usually the mortgage company can be okay with putting title to a husband and wife, even though only one of them is the person who's qualified for the loan. Is that not correct, Ron?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so usually we can do that.
Yeah.
But once in a blue moon, I'll get somebody who's sole spouse, one spouse has qualified for the mortgage, and then they put the house entirely in their name.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I've had instances where I've created joint trusts for the two of them, put the house in for the benefit of both of them, and it's been acceptable that if that spouse whose income was the founding of
one that
Right.
got
the
it going.
mortgage,
Yeah.
the surviving spouse is still holding that, or still able to, as long as they pay the mortgage.
Right,
is still
exactly.
able to
Yeah,
hold
I mean that's the key, right? That's
Right.
yeah, that's the whole thing triggers and goes downhill when you stop paying the mortgage.
Correct. Is able to hold that property in the trust because it was created for the two of them, and it was funded by the person who was the holder of the loan, holder of the mortgage, and that turned out fine. And the assessor's office is fine with that as well.
Oh, it's good.
So yeah, we can do that.
I like it. No, I mean, I think it's a good alternative. If there's someone where they're, let's say bringing that other spouse on the loan, where okay, it kind of throws everything off. You can settle that after the loan closes. You just talk to the servicer, find out, exactly how that all works, and then you set up a trust structure where, the home's is titled this way. Because you could always do things after the fact, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. We just want to make sure that we don't trigger any,
Throw up
do
a
a
red
sale
flag
clause or any of that stuff.
Right.
So we want to make sure that there isn't the loan holder doesn't go, hey, you transferred it out to a wholly different entity,
right.
and there's an issue.
Right. Got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But usually between husbands and wives isn't an issue.
Got it. So in terms of, the process, so I come in, I sit down here at your lovely conference table, and what kind of information do you need to know? Like what do people need to figure out before they start this?
Well, usually if someone says they want to come in and do a trust and we have a conversation about it and they seem to be a good candidate, honestly.
What's a good candidate?
A good candidate is anybody who owns a piece of real property.
That's pretty much it. So if you own a piece of real property, this is good for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the best way to transfer a piece of real property to your beneficiaries would be through a trust, honestly. So I would say to them, hey, I need some basic information from you. I usually give them a questionnaire, ask that they fill it out. I try to keep my questionnaire pretty simple because I've seen some that are incredibly complicated and people don't like to fill out forms. I get that. And I'm sure Ron totally understands what I'm talking about.
Except for the millennials. They like to fill stuff out all the time online.
We gotta move it on. Yeah, maybe we should move it to online so that more millennials will get on board with their wills and trusts.
Exactly. So maybe I'll have you create
Yeah.
forms for me.
She's looking at me because she knows if it's going to happen. So they come in and so what do they need? So they need to know who it should go to.
I need some basic information from them. Who they are, where they live, all that good stuff. I need to know if you have who your beneficiaries are. Who are they? Your kids? Okay, let's just assume they're your kids. And okay, they're your kids. And what percentages do you want your things to go to them?
Right.
I mean, most of the time it's equal, but I've seen a number of cases where it's not, and every parent has a very good reason for why it's not. Like, for example,
I love this child more.
Well,
this child has called me every Mother's Day and told me how wonderful I am. This other one does not. They can go to hell.
Well, usually the answer for that is they'll go, well, Johnny, during his lifetime, I've given him a lot of money.
Yeah, well, that's
and so
right.
now he's
already got his share.
He already got his share.
That's it. That's probably more
and
prevalent.
doesn't need it when I'm not here.
Right.
Or Johnny's a drug dealer, or spendthrift. You have all those clauses.
Correct. Right.
Well,
Exactly.
and since you just mentioned it, like things mention the no contest kind of clause and stuff like that, like where
yeah, we want people to not be able to contest documents. I'll put a no contest clause in, which basically says, for example, you can't stop someone from suing someone because you just can't.
And it's so funny. Everybody who I've heard talk about this, they think it's like some sort of like shield, like that they can put up. It's like, oh no. My kids will never be able to fight because I have this no contest thing. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. Anybody can sue for anything.
Well, yeah, it doesn't really work like that. The way no contest clause really works is that if, like I said, you can sue anyone for anything. Like I'm looking at Ron here. I don't like the color of his shirt. Can I sue him?
I don't either,
Absolutely.
by the way. I'm so like...
Karen picked it out. Why are you picking on me?
I've been saying that all day, Julie, and I swear to God.
It's from Banana Republic. I got it many, many years ago. It's very nice.
Let's sue this son of a bitch. Let's sue him. But you were saying...
You can't prevent someone from suing someone, but what you can say and what you do in a no contest clause is you say, fine. If one of the beneficiaries wants to sue, they can do that. So let's just say it's Johnny and Jane, okay, and it's the two kids of the parents who have created the trust for them or whatnot, and instead of going 50-50, it's gone some other way, okay, and one of them says, hey, it's so unfair, I should have
gotten 50-50.
I only got I don't know, whatever percentage. I should have gotten all of it because mom and dad were not, usually there's only two grounds for contesting a document. There are two main grounds. One's fraud and undue influence, and the other one's capacity. Okay, so dad wasn't in his right mind when he wrote this thing. I don't know. He's heavily medicated, whatever. And so then what happens is they say, I'm going to sue because I think he wrote it when he was incapacitated. And the answer is a no contest clause works where if you can't stop them from suing, but you can say if you fail to prevail in your challenge, it cuts you out as if you predeceased. Oh. So it's an all or nothing game. You want to challenge it? Absolutely, but you better win, because if you don't win, you get 0.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
So watch your butt. Well, that's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them for us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Clarified Realty Podcast, all one word. If you have any questions about real estate or you're looking for someone to help you buy or sell a home, remember, I'm actually a licensed real estate agent. I'd love to help you out. So please email me directly at tom@clarifiedrealty.com or give me a call at 818-335-7662. Don't be shy. Come on, guys, give me a ring. For more exclusive bonus content and advice between episodes, please check out our website, www.clarifiedrealty.com. Also on our homepage, you'll find links to helpful buyer and seller guides that can give you some great information for starting your home buying or home seller process, so definitely check those out. Here's a new thing. We actually have an Alexa skill, so search the Alexa store for the Clarified Realty Podcast. Add our skill to your daily briefing and get a dose of real estate news and tips every day of the year. Definitely give it a try. It's pretty cool. I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram as well. My handle for all three of those are @Clarified Realty. Please leave feedback and reviews on iTunes or in the comment section on our page. Together we're stronger, so if you have any questions or ways that we can make this podcast better, please let us know. My amazing theme song, Hey Now, is from the band Wolf. That's Wolf with 2 Fs. And please go check them out and like them on SoundCloud. And just a little disclaimer, I'm licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate. My license number is 0171533. Ron's is?
Guaranteed rate, NMLS 2611, NMLS ID 558706, California and Texas.
The advice we give is only for properties located in the state of California. For all other states, please contact your local real estate agent or real estate professional. Well, that's about it. Ron, you all good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming by, everybody. And remember, the greatest thing you can ever do is make someone feel at home. Take care. We'll see you next week.